In this episode of Mighty Car Mods, I'm going to be starting the Moon Buggy. Welcome to another episode of Mighty Car Mods. We are continuing the restoration of this strange moon buggy. Yesterday with my good friend Isaac over there, we rebuilt the carbies. He's a bit of a VW aficionado. Today, we're taking it to new limits. We're going to the outer stratosphere of modifications, and we are going to be starting this car. It has not run for over 5 years. It's looking very gunky. Yesterday, I redid the fuel system. We worked on the carbies. Today, we're going to be doing spark plugs, oils, check the brakes. We're doing everything else, basically. Today the car's going to run, it's actually going to work, and then of course we are going head to head with Martys MR2 for a rear engine, mid, not front engine budget challenge. Both of these cars cost $8,000, and then whoever wins will, I don't know, win the other person's car or just win the cred of a bunch of people that they don't know on the internet. But that's the plan. I'm just going to dive right into it. We're going to kick some spacey tunes. I've made some new spacey music, and we're going to kick the tunes and get this thing started.
The distributor routes high voltage current from the ignition coil to the spark plugs in the correct duration and order. Because this car's been sitting for 5 years, we have no idea of its condition, so we're replacing whatever looks suspect. We're inverting the terminal on the top of the rotor button to match what's already on the car. With the rotor button now replaced, we're also replacing the distributor cap. Like the rest of this car, it's full of sand, so we're replacing it with a brand new one in black, and we're also going to replace the leads while we're at it. Next up, it's time to replace the spark plugs and check the condition of the plugs that are already in the engine and see if they can reveal any more of this car's secrets.
So we just removed this plug, and what we can see is that it's really black and super fuely. What does this tell us about the state of what was going on when this plug was actually firing?
Look, it probably tells us a couple of things. The first thing that comes to mind is it may have run a little bit rich. So that could be a fuel pressure issue, maybe just a jetting issue.
A little bit.
A little bit. It's quite black and fuely. Also, the other thing it could be too is this motor may not have a lot of kilometres on it, so the rings may not have actually bed in correctly to the bore.
Yep.
So we'll sort of assess that when we start it up. And
I reckon that's actually very likely, considering that this was built as a prop for TV. I don't think it's done bulk case.
Yeah, you know? and look, they are really an old-fashioned engine, even though it's probably quite highly modified, is what we've noticed. So those rings probably needed a good 1,000 Ks just to bed in, and they probably needed like a good 20-minute hard engine brake in.
Yeah.
May not have had the chance to get it, just on time constraint or whatever.
Yeah, cool. And this is not a Volkswagen plug,
No, that's
right?
correct. No, so this is actually a much smaller thread, but it's also, this is sort of a fairly common replacement in the high-performance Volkswagen world. What tends to happen when these cylinder heads are modified?
Sorry, I could just hear Marty laughing in my mind. When you said high-performance Volkswagen,
mate.
I could almost imagine Martin going, high-performance Volkswagen. Sorry, I heard him right there.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair enough, I suppose. But the thing is, like, he may call this a mower plug, but it's smaller physically because they have modified the cylinder heads, the combustion chambers, and the ports.
Yep.
So as a result of that, there's probably some welding that's been going on these heads, and they've had to move to a different length and a smaller thread plug.
Okay.
So yeah, it's just another clue, I guess, that tells us the engine's not stock.
Yep.
It's definitely not a 1600, and hopefully it goes all right. So
this is literal automotive archaeology, isn't it?
100%.
You've probably seen Mighty Car Mods in the past where we go
100%.
through cars finding dirty stuff, but this is
different
like
level of
engine archaeology. This is awesome.
Yeah. And as we saw yesterday, like we saw with the doing the carburetors, there's so many clues that tell us what this is like and why, in what way it's been modified.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a big engine. That's
cool.
That's what we know. So
right. Well, let's pull all these out.
Yeah, why not?
Replace them.
Sure.
And then continue on.
I'm removing the terminal nuts from the existing spark plugs so I can transfer them over to our new plugs before we grease them up and install them in the engine. And yes, the tool we're using to install them is a piece of rubber hose.
So the reason that we're using this little bit of a hose here is that Isaac was saying that if we actually drop one of these spark plugs down here into this kind of fan housing, it's potentially half a day to get them out again. So this mad little hack is just stick that hose over there once you've loosened it up, and then just spin it, and hopefully it should be coming out. Otherwise, there's just a bit of hose that's spinning around doing nothing. But that means it just stops things falling into places where they're not meant to be. So there it is. That's a cool little hack. That one's super fuely as well. So yeah, just use a little bit of hose, or of course, if you're a Nissan owner, just reach under your driver's seat, grab your bong, rip that out, and you've got an extra little tool that you can use.
With the spark plugs done, now we've got to move on to modifying some gaskets.
So the manifolds on this Volkswagen are absolutely huge because obviously it's a high performance engine. These are the biggest gaskets that we could get, but you can see even when they're sitting here that they are small, which is going to impede flow, it's going to limit our power, which is not what we want. We want more power, we want more flow. So I'm just gonna cut the inside of this out. Now I'm using the Ryobi rotary tool. This is excellent because it's on a battery. You can take it everywhere. Has lots of different bits and stuff at the end of it. Literally battery it up, choose your speed, turn it on, and then rotary yourself out some power with your safety goggles on. Of course. Hi, Mum.
I've sandwiched all of the gaskets together, which saves me from having to do them one by one. And using the metal flange as a template means that the modified sized gaskets will be a perfect fit for our engine. With the gaskets mostly done, my next job is to replace all of the vacuum lines which have also perished over time. And we've also found, you guessed it, even more sand.
There's just sand in everything. This is one of the gaskets that was on the carby, and if you reach out and touch it, you can actually feel the sand all over it. So this engine must have been hurting, and it's a good feeling just to get rid of all this stuff once and for all.
While I'm making up the new vacuum lines, Isaac is replacing all of the leads on the distributor.
There's a lot of rocks actually around the spark plugs here. That would have been exciting if any of that went in the engine.
Alright, so that is both carbies on. If you're wondering why we haven't taken the manifold off, it's because they are so heavily ported that we don't actually have access to gaskets that'll fit down the bottom. Maybe we can make some, or maybe we can order some, but the fact is we just don't have any. So we're gonna cross our fingers and hope for the best. We still got to put the air filters on, still got to bolt these on, sort out some stud things. The velocity stacks, the auxiliary boosters.
They're in, mate. The auxiliary venturies are in.
Oh, the auxiliary venturies. No, I'm talking about the auxiliary boosters.
Oh, no, we weren't going to. Oh, I don't think we're going to talk about that, bro, but hey, maybe.
Maybe
if they can't do it skid, maybe.
What's next?
Look, next thing we have to do is probably get Venturi, our velocity stacks, our air cleaners, carby tops, bolt the carbies down. I think from there, we just need to flush the oil, new fuel, set up base timing, and we might be good to turn the key, maybe.
Oh, so like maybe within an hour or two we're starting it?
Look, we'd be pretty close. I think we'll just check the rocker clearances as well. I think that's just a good fail-safe to just check the health of down there.
Yeah.
And then we're good to go. Good to turn that key.
Awesome, man. Let's do it.
Thanks,
Bad
bro.
skids.
Yeah, bro. Let's do it.
I'm always appreciative of the people that I get to meet and hang out with while making Mighty Car Mods. It'd be easy to just send these away and get someone else to fix them, but I think it's respectful to the car and the engine to try and do as much as I can with the help of a knowledgeable mate to guide me along the way. The real glory is not winning the race, it's winning at life by having a go and learning as much as you can along the way. But yeah, beating the MR2 will be good too. Anyway, we're reattaching the linkage between the carbies. This is a delicate process that's way easier with two people. From here, we can finish off the carbies and then we're moving on underneath the car to change the oil.
So I just went to undo the sump plug so we could change the oil, and I was having a feel to see if it was a 19 or a 21, and the process of having that feel realised that it's just finger tight. Like, it's just not even done up with a tool, which is pretty hectic. Be interesting to see how much sand is in there. The oil actually looks fresh, considering it's 5 years old. I guess it's millions of years old, really, isn't it?
It really is.
Because that's just munched up dinosaurs.
Pure dinosaur oil. Volkswagens have a very specific Volkswagen smell.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not it. That's
What is
just
that
fuel
smell?
in oil.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was an issue. Most probably with it sitting around, fuel pressure regulator may have failed, and it's just been taking all the fuel from the fuel tank and putting it into the sump with the oil.
Right.
It really smells, man.
Yeah. But weird smells or not, the exciting thing is that this is going to smoke Martys MR2. And
It's
that's
probably just going to
awesome.
smoke when we start it. That's what might actually happen.
Yes. But once we sort that out, I think the fact that some like 1970s technology is going to beat his 90s Japanese rubbish, which I love. I love 90s Japanese rubbish. But the fact that like Granddaddy's going to smoke him is just awesome.
I think this is the underdog just purely for its age, maybe.
Oh, see, I think the
got no
MR2 is
technology
the
in it.
underdog because it's garbage.
Yeah, probably after the test we'll see that it's the underdog, but at the moment, I'm just playing the game conservative, I think.
So Isaac, why does the engine case say Brazil on it? It's got a Volkswagen logo, an Audi logo, and it says 2BR Brazil.
Look, these cases, this is probably a later model engine case, and there is still genuine new parts that can be purchased.
That's crazy.
For instance, in my car, I have a genuine Mexican case that's actually fairly recent.
And you got a Beetle, right?
In a Beetle, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a Type 1 case like this is. So this is definitely not from 1975.
Yeah,
It
okay.
would have been a brand new case in a box that this engine was started
So
from.
potentially it's like a new engine.
Yeah, it
that
may
we
have done like no Ks, and you can see there's not really any damage to the engine case underneath, so it's not had a hard life for 30 years in another car.
Yeah, okay.
This may have done 100 Ks. It may
Yeah,
have done
okay.
1,000 Ks. We don't know.
So the 1975 Super Bug bit of this is actually just the floor pan up there.
That's correct, and quite possibly the gearbox.
Yeah, okay.
That may have just been rebuilt, and it could have been from the same car.
Yeah.
So there's a high chance that that is probably original.
Okay. So far we know from dropping the oil that it's full of petrol.
It
and that
stinks.
there's way more than 2.5 litres
litres.
of oil there.
Yeah, this has an external oil cooler and oil filter.
Yeah.
So those lines are going to hold a capacity of oil as well. But it really just doesn't smell like fuel. We'll do the oil filter straight away. And they're all cheap parts. So, I mean, if we do that twice,
Yeah,
that's
it's
not an issue.
$40
either.
or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, it's cheap insurance at this point to leave the oil in those lines.
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
All right, let's dump some oil in and then
Yeah, man.
we're getting ready to start.
We're so close.
Awesome.
So there is fuel in the oil lines, but we don't want to starve the engine, so we're going to leave it in there and then change the oil twice to clear it.
So changing the oil on your car is a really simple procedure that if you're into cars, everybody should know how to do it. But one little tip is that if you take your old oil filter off, always check and make sure that that O-ring is still in there. As you can see, this one isn't, and that means that it's most likely still down there. Because otherwise you're going to put your new one on, think that it's all sealed. It's not sealed, and that's why. So always check, make sure it's there. If it's not, go fishing for it. The other thing is as well, I didn't wear gloves, but you should, especially when you're playing with oils and other stuff. So if you've got gloves, use gloves when you're changing oil. Cool. I'm going to get the new filter so that we don't have any oil starvation issues. I'm actually going to fill the other oil, filter up with oil first, which is easy because this is relocated up here anyway.
So we're going to check the clearances between the rocker and the head of the valve. So
Right.
we're going to cycle the engine by hand,
Yeah.
and we're going to check that there's nothing that's going wrong there, make
Okay.
sure that's okay. And then, yeah, rocker cover gaskets, and then we're putting fuel in it.
Awesome.
And oil, of course, so...
So close, people.
Really
so
close.
Because of the sensitivity of oil starvation in the engine, I'm filling up the oil filter first. This is not something that I would usually do, but we're not taking any chances when there's a looming battle with an MR2 on the horizon. If you enjoy our videos and want to support the show, we've got all sorts of awesome merchandise available, including our Mighty Car Mods Flex Fit hat, which we ship worldwide from right here in Sydney, Australia. And next up, one of our favourite noises.
So the sound that's coming from down here is exactly the same sound that we heard from Yaris Hilton after it exploded. So that has now got me worried. Is this a normal sound to be coming from this kind of engine?
Not this much, so we're going to readjust that. There's just one thing to consider is the composition of the push rods. If they're a steel push rod, the clearance is less. If it's an aluminium standard push rod, the clearance will be more.
And that's because it's air-cooled, right? So the engine's actually like...
The engine's expanding.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so steel will expand slower and less amount than an aluminium push rod. So in a standard engine, there's more expansion of the push rod, so the rocker needs clearance.
Right, so we can basically adjust these now to get less rickety-tackety-tack.
Correct. Do you know if we can look up just the clearance that this cam's meant to have, like the rocker clearance?
Yeah.
I think it's a SCAT cam.
Yeah.
So SCAT.
SCAT.
Yep, SCAT. It'll probably have it on a sheet or something. It'll just tell us like what it recommends.
Oh. Okay.
What is it, man?
Here's a little bit of advice for those playing along at home. Do not Google scat cam. Why? Why are they doing that? Is there?
I don't even want to know, man.
Can I look for something other than scat cam? That will
SCAT VW
scat
cam
VW
shaft?
cam. See, that's just going to be scat cam, but in a car.
Oh, sorry, bro.
Scat VW cam.
I have never.
Oh, here it
found
is.
that
No, I've got
searching
it. Camshafts, scat VW. I've got it. Okay, cool. $75. All right, here we go.
Okay, people, this is it. We're in the final stages before we start this car for the first time in half a decade. With a final clean-up and check, I'm finishing the fuel system while Isaac works his magic on the engine.
Drive me down to the city light.
With the fuel system finished, it's time for oil. I'm using Castrol GTX, which is an update of a classic oil that's been around since 1968. Perfect for my mad little buggy. After a quick cup of tea to honour the spirit of Binky, now the last thing to do is install our Century battery. And once that battery is in, my friends, we are ready to turn the key.
Let 'em burn. Fire on the street.
So our new Century battery is in. Everything else we think is done. The negative terminal is going on right now. The wiring is still an unknown on this car, and that means if there's any sizzles or fires or New Year's fireworks, I can just pull that quickly by hand. Eventually, probably like our other cars, we'll just go to Super Cheap Auto and just get one of those switches and put it on the battery. But for now, battery's connected, but I can pull it off quickly if we need to. So I think it's time to turn the key. What's interesting about the key for this is that it's a Hyundai key, which would suggest that this here is from a Hyundai. Is that a common thing to do, sticking Hyundai stuff in a Volkswagen?
Hyundai steering racks, funny enough, go into Super Beetles really well, but I've never heard of someone using a Hyundai ignition barrel.
Yeah,
But this
okay.
is all unknown, I guess. I mean, it's race car stuff.
Cool. All right, anyway, I'm putting it onto accessories. I didn't hear anything.
We have nothing currently.
I can't smell anything. There's no fire. Shall I go accessory 2?
Please. Okay, turn it back off. Go again, turn off and back on.
Yes.
I do have some spark, which is good. So it looks like the distributor's doing its thing. Have another go at cranking until that light comes off.
Oh! Did you see that? Our light just went off. That means we have oil pressure. It's official.
Woohoo!
Whoop, 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 whoop.
Yeah.
Yeah. One step closer to vag skids. It's pronounced vag though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's time to throw in some fuel and do a final check to make sure that nothing is going to explode. It turns out that a final check was a good idea. There's something wrong with our fuel pressure regulator and we can't get the pressure down, so we've had to rebuild it using the internals from the old one. With that sorted, we're going to try and start it for the first time.
So the battery's in, everything's connected, fuel system's done, carbies are done. We've just put a couple of litres of fuel in it to see if it works. We have been turning it over to make sure that there's oil pressure, which there is. And now it's time to see if this nugget of a Volkswagen Buggy will start after sitting in a shed for 5 years. We think it might make some crazy noises, hence why we have our ear protection. But let's do it. You ready, Isaac?
Yep, we're ready.
Please start now. You just let it prime for a second and
You're good.
here we go. Yes! Yes!
Yeah, bro, we did it. Woo!
Well done, man. That's awesome.
Straight up. Sounds good too. Awesome. Let's just disco the battery and maybe just have a bit of a look around, see if there's anything obvious we see spilling out. It's good,
So
man.
there it is, everybody. It works. That is the sound of an imminent MR2 defeat. Oh man, I can't believe it.
Awesome.
It actually works.
Sounds pretty clean too, even though we haven't dialed the carbies in yet.
Yeah.
Like, it's got to get better than that already. So we need to get it to temp and we need to do a few things checking how much each cylinder's pulling and do some timing checks and we're good. It's in the ballpark though.
But I can't believe that after that many years,
It's still
it
alive.
just started.
Yeah.
It's
Kicked
still
on quick.
here.
Yeah. They're amazing, man. Like, you know, they survive, you know, for this long for a reason. I think even stuff as modified as this, it's still just going to run.
That is amazing.
Yep.
All right, well, we should spend a bit of time just having a fiddle, having a look.
sure.
Thank you, everybody that watched this episode. What an epic way to end it. If you want a Mighty Car Mods hat, we sell these on our store, mightycarmods.com. We don't do Patreon or any of that crowdfunding stuff or whatever, but if you do want to support the show, we ship and send all that merch from here in Sydney, Australia, anywhere in the world. Massive thank you to Isaac.
No worries, man.
Thank you very
All good,
much.
bro.
From teching
Pleasure, man.
guitars to vaging it up. It's amazing. And pretty soon on the show, you're going to see this going head to head with the MR2. Who do you think's going to win?
Scoot up, boo, rap, ba, da, ba, scoot, dum, ba.